Good afternoon and welcome to Real Chicks Rock Presents Real Discussions. I'm your host for today, Michelle Dawes-Bird, and as always, I'm super excited to be here. Always super excited to be here. Today is no different. We're practicing social distancing. I feel like my guest is so far. So far away. But we wanted to be safe, and we're so thankful that you guys decided to spend the afternoon with us. Thanks to all the listeners that are checking us out. For those of you that don't know, let me just give you a little bit of background about what Real Chicks Rock is all about. We're all about a brand that collaborates and connects and raises awareness for women through so many different platforms. We do it through public speaking, we do it through our public service, we do it through our mentoring, and we do it through this platform, which is the arts. And I tend to like this one the most of lately because I get to talk about topics and issues that impact us most. And then I bring people in to kind of be a subject matter expert. We have conversation, we have dialogue, but it's all about empowering the people with more information, right? So tools is empowerment, so that's what we're all about. So thanks guys for joining us. Today's topic is all about yoga, all about yoga. Yoga is a huge sensation, I think. It's always been around, but I think more and more people are getting engaged with it because we're home more. We drive a lot. Before we were home, we were driving all the time. We're behind the desk most of the time, and we're just stiff and we're tight and all this kind of stuff. But we really are starting to become more aware of our health with everything that's going on. And yes, the pandemic is still in place, and some people are still sheltering in place, and we're still faced with challenges about school and our kids and things. There's so many things that are going on. Our stress levels are up. You know, we're trying to eat better while we are at home, but we're restrictive, right? The gyms are not open. Some that are, we're not going. There's still some reservations about us being in certain public spaces. So it's like, how do we still continue to stay healthy and move and be flexible during all of this? So again, today's topic is all about yoga. And my guest today to my right is somebody I like her. I do. She's a beautiful person. When I met her like years ago, I just tapped her. I said, "You're just beautiful." I was just like tapped her and said, "You're just beautiful." And we just connected ever since. And so my guest today on the right in the studio is Marr-Teen guy. Hi, Marr-Teen.
Hi.
How are you?
I am wonderful.
I haven't seen you in a while.
To be here. I know.
You know, when I see you, it's at outdoor festivals,
right.
but they've been canceled this year.
That's right.
So they're robbing us of our time.
That's right.
So I had to bring you in the studio
Love
today.
It.
I had to
wait.
have it. Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't have Marr-Teen here by herself. I have another wonderful, beautiful lady coming into us from Zoom, and that's Annelise Leal. Annelise, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm good. You are the owner and curator and founder of Sacred Thread Yoga Studio, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, located in East Atlanta.
In Old Fourth Ward, we have two.
Wow, that's right.
East side, yeah.
That's right. So, Annelise, tell the people a little bit about yourself. Just a little bit.
Well, let's see. I am a new mother. We were just talking about that, which is part of why I'm remote today.
Yes.
I've been practicing yoga for a little over 20 years. I found it in my early 20s, and it has been a godsend in so many different ways. I love music. I need to get in your group and start hitting those outdoor festivals.
Yes. Join us.
Amazing. Yeah, that's me.
That's you. That's awesome. So, Marr-Teen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So let's see. I think I've been practicing, teaching in the world of yoga for almost 10 years now, I
Really?
think. Yeah. And it started with chronic pain. So, I took a class at the Y and fell in love with Shavasana. That was really kind of how I, and stuff was going on. I had just had a baby. My son was 8 weeks old when I started practicing yoga. So it was something that really just helped me through sort of that postpartum that I had going on. But, it's been great. I love teaching in Atlanta. I now work full-time and teach for a women's shelter here in Atlanta. But it's been, service is part of our practice when we start talking about karma yoga. And I think that was a big part of my training and what I wanted to do. So,
was it a specific pain like for you?
Breastfeeding.
Wow.
So my neck, right?
Wow.
this is what you do when you breastfeed.
Right.
No one would ever think, but I couldn't figure out. And my friend was like, just take a yoga class. Went to the Y. It was cheap. I almost threw up in my first yoga class.
Why?
Like that's because it was just, I hadn't done any exercise. I was 8 weeks after, out
Yeah.
from having a baby.
Right.
And I pushed my body. And I wanted to.
Okay.
I wanted to.
Okay.
And then we had Shavasana. And that was all she wrote. I was just like, what is this stillness and this rest? Like when you have a new baby, you're like, what is this? Why am I resting?
Yeah.
So, and I was hooked. I just kept going back. It was like a little bit of a drug. I just kept going back.
And 10 years later. Annelise, when was your first experience with yoga? I know you've been teaching for 20 years, but when was it for you?
Well, mine was different.
Okay.
So I did not like Savasana when I started. I was in my early 20s. In fact, the very first time I did yoga, it was on not even a DVD, it was a VHS.
Come on now. Come on now.
In a college dorm with my guy friends, actually. And then shortly thereafter, studios started popping up. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina at that time. And I went into the studio and I fell in love. But for me, it was the breath, the pranayama practice, breathing and moving with my breath. And feeling that rhythm between my breath and my own body was like meditative and just everything for me. And Savasana, if I had have found Savasana now, I would have been like Marr-Teen. I would have been like, yes. But at 20, I was like, I don't need that part. And I was like an acquired. Quiet.
Yeah. Wow. So what made you decide to start teaching? When did you turn that corner and said, I want to help other people learn about yoga?
I think that for me, I've always been a bit of a teacher. When I was in my corporate life, before I did this full time, I did a lot of training and a lot of going out. I worked in a medical field, so I would go out and train doctors on how to use different products that we sold. And I've always really enjoyed just teaching and taking things that might seem complex and making them really simple to people so that they can start to feel that little bit of drug, like I want to come back to it. You do have to I don't want to say bait people, but you do have to break it down and make it accessible and approachable. So I've always loved doing that anyway, but I actually moved to Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a Southern girl. I moved to Boston in my early 20s and I loved yoga and didn't know anybody. And I decided to rent a space right next to a yoga studio because I was like, if nothing else, I can do a bunch of yoga. And before you knew it, I was teaching and all that stuff.
Wow.
I love it.
Yeah.
How was your first practice? Your first day is teaching yoga. How did that go? What was that experience
My first time teaching?
Yeah.
I loved it. I wasn't nervous about it at all because I have always liked getting up and talking in front of people.
Don't be shy, Annelise.
So I'm good with this. Yeah. And then as it shifted because I've been teaching for 20 years. So I was in my early 20s and I had all kinds of stuff that I needed to work through. Yeah. And still do, by the way. That we're never there, right? So I have evolved a lot as a teacher over the years because I've grown a lot as a woman over the years.
Right. Right.
So I don't know. I wish I could find the people that were in my first years of classes and know what that experience was like for them. But I love teaching. I agree, like taking something that has helped me so much and being able to share it with other people. And there's so many different tools in yoga. It's not what we always think of in our mind when we hear yoga. There's so many different tools that it actually is a practice that anybody can do. It's sometimes just a matter of finding the right tool that really fits for you.
Right, and the right village of people to do it with.
Right.
So Marr-Teen, tell me, why did you wanted to start teaching yoga? When did it hit you?
I think very similar to what Annelise said. I love the practice so much, and I've always I've always been an aspiring teacher. I've always wanted to teach. I went to school for early elementary education. Like I've always wanted to teach in some capacity, and I've always played sports. I've always been pretty physical, and this just was a way to very similar share my experience with the practice and how it's helped. I remember I was very nervous when I initially started to teach after my teacher training, but there's so much that happens in the evolution of you as a yogi that, you know, you get out of teacher training and you're like, I'm going to be this kind of teacher and I'm going to do this. But yoga is sort of the practice evolves as you evolve. Your practice evolves, you know? And I always say you are only as good of a teacher as you are a student. So the more impactful, you know, the more evolution you have in your life, the more challenging things, the more you lean into what happens, the better teacher you become.
Yeah. And you know, ladies, yoga is such a broad term, right?
Yes.
For us rookies, us novice people, we don't know. We just hear yoga. But you ladies, as yogis, as teachers, tell us the differences. So Annelise, tell us there's different types of yogas, right, that people can practice, right? Give us a few.
Absolutely. So yoga actually is a philosophy. It's not just the exercise of yoga that we think of that's been kind of commercialized and communicated in the US, but yoga is a philosophy, and the physical practice might be a starting point, but there's other people I've met, God bless them, who start with meditation or who start with the breathing practice. There's all different versions or variations of yoga, and even within the physical, you mentioned that you love yin, which is a practice of long holds and stillness, and it's a very passive practice. So you're going into stretches and you're kind of sitting in them. And, you know, some people do really love that and only want to practice that way. And then there's others who want hot yoga that's very physical. And then there's the gamut kind of in between the two, you know, ends, right? So there's a lot.
It's a lot. Which one is your favorite? Do you have a favorite, Annelise?
Well, I started young, so I loved hot, sweaty, powerful yoga, and I still do. However, I also have acquired the taste of yin and savasana, but it cannot be an everyday practice for me. That's more like it's something that I do because when I take a yin class and I'm really like mentally into it, my body feels like it does after getting a good massage. So like twice a month, I make time to mentally be into a yin practice because the benefits for the body are really good.
And you know that because you practice while pregnant, like almost until the birth of your baby. You were still doing sessions at the studio. I mean, you were phenomenal. So I know it helped you in a tremendous amount of ways.
It did, and I started back a week after I gave birth.
Oh, are you serious?
Good for you.
Wow.
But it was very short, and we were in lockdown at that point. And there was a lot of online, which actually, as a new mom, was great for me because I didn't have to leave. I didn't have to worry about finding, you know, somebody to care for her for 2 hours. You know, I could do like a half an hour practice at home, and it was so nice.
That's nice.
And that is a challenge for most women. We're going to talk about that in a second. Marr-Teen, you have a favorite? Do you have one that you like?
You know, I've tried power yoga, which is a more physically strenuous yoga. I've done vinyasa. My favorite would be my lineage or where I practice and trained, which would be a Kalinatha yoga, which is a blend of Kundalini yoga, which has to do with the chakras, and just classical yoga, which are just the classical postures that you like, downward dog and warrior. And so that would be, I'm not a fan of, I try to do hot, but I feel like my dosha won't allow me to do hot. And Annelise knows what I mean. Like I come out of a hot yoga class and I'm just like agitated in a way.
Fiery.
It's too fiery. It's too fiery. But my friend swears by it. She loves it. So I like yin at times, but I just kind of like in between kind of a yin and a power.
Okay.
Like, I'm not a fan of vinyasa either, because then it just, and it depends on my mood. Like Annelise said, sometimes she enjoys doing yin. Sometimes I really enjoy a tough power class.
Wow.
Because it pushes my body, and I enjoy that aspect of the physical
Yes,
practice.
of the push.
But over the last 5 years, meditation has been my jam. Like, that's been my...
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's just... And it's all relevant, but I think, as Annelise said, everyone finds their path to yoga in some way. And a lot of times, especially here in the West, we find it through the physical practice,
we
the
do.
asana practice.
Yeah.
And I did too, but as time went on, I started struggling, and I was going to meditation, and I was going to prayer, and I was going to stillness more.
Wow.
And that's just how it evolved for me over time.
Let's talk about it, because you ladies have been at Annelise for 20 years, you for 10. I feel for some of us, it's been like a current term, or just we're starting to embrace it more maybe in the last 5 years, right? But it's always been here. And I was sharing with Annelise in our green room space in conversation that I really love and appreciate her practice at Sacred Thread, because it's very diverse. It's a multicultural setting in there.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when you talk to African American women, we want to practice yoga, but we can't find the studios in which to do it. And another point that Annelise brought up is that we're moms, and sometimes we don't have people to watch our baby, so we can't always make the practice. And I'm starting to see a shift, you know, before the pandemic, of course, that there's more of us coming into the space, and we're learning, and we're training under Annelise, you know, and people like yourself, but we're putting in the work, and we're pushing our bodies in ways that we haven't done before. So it's just really important, would you not say, ladies, to start like yoga? We need yoga now, probably more than ever before. Marr-Teen, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, you know, especially as women,
right?
I think that we have, our plates are always full. There's not a time where I don't think our plates are full. And I think as moms, as working women, navigating that, for me, from my experience, meditation has been really important to placing me in the present moment.
Right.
Because what happens is I get full of worry, and I get full of anxiety, and I get full of all these things that I have to do and accomplish and complete. And I feel like meditation or any stillness practice with breathing or pranayama practice just pulls you back to the present moment.
Right.
That's where I've found the most relief, is that my anxiety is not as much.
Okay.
And so in turn, that outward response to my kids or my fiance, or just even in my workplace, it shifts.
Yeah. Calms you down, right?
And you're able to, we use this term a lot in yoga, but the ability to hold space, because as women, I think that's what we do a lot naturally, right? So that's been my experience with the practice. And also talking about needing it when we talk about racial injustice, and we talk about, now we're really actively talking about this delusion of inclusion in our yoga spaces, and it's important to me. Kashi is a very diverse yoga space. We graduate a lot of Black yoga teachers, but even my Swami, as a white woman, we've had to have these really deep, open conversations about how are we going to shift this narrative and shift what we think is inclusion, and really start to develop a belonging. Right? It's one thing to go into your studio and say, okay, I feel included, but do I belong here? I've gone to a lot of yoga studios, and I'll call them out. Form Yoga is one of the ones that I've went to recently, and I did a 6-week boot camp at 6 a.m. I was the only Black woman in every single class.
Wow.
There were 20 students in that class.
Wow.
So I knew at that moment that wasn't a place for me.
Okay.
And I automatically kind of put myself off to the side in front of the mirror, and just kind of, I already had this feeling. So I say that to say it is important now, because I think yoga is a place where that dialogue needs to happen.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to that point. That's a hot one.
Okay.
Annelise, I want to ask you the importance of yoga today, and I just want to say this too. I've been to your studio, and I know you have not only inclusion with your students, but your staff. You have a black woman that works with you, Stephanie, right? There's maybe some others.
Multiple. We
Yes.
have that, and I just want to reflect on something that Marr-Teen just shared about her mat off to the side. She is a powerful woman, right? So anything that makes you feel like, oh, I need to shift to the side, I mean, that just, I don't know, I had a reaction when you said that, because I want you to feel like you can be in the front and center, right? Because it's where you belong, and I can tell your energy. So I hear that. I just want to, reflect on that. But in terms of inclusivity, I think for me, because I grew up in a predominantly Black community in Greensboro, North Carolina, and we have a HBCU there, A&T University, that was kind of near to where I live. And so I have always felt very comfortable with different ethnicities and skin tones and cultures and music and food, but even that, I am still a white woman. So I think, from my standpoint, what I've tried to do, and I'm not perfect, and relearning and kind of breaking down even my own inner judgments. I think it's important to have teachers of color. I think that it's really difficult to have a studio that feels like a space that everybody can belong in when the voices in power and leadership are not diverse.
Absolutely.
So amplifying the voices of women in color, Black women specifically, has been something that I've been working on being more aware of and investing in. And even my hope, if my studio doors stay open, is to hire a program director of color for the studio next year, because I think that idea of not just being a teacher, but also being in power and having a voice is critically important to balance my voice as a white woman, right? So,
You're pretty successful, Marr-Teen, Annelise, in how you attract the audience to come, or people to come. Is it your marketing? You have a marketing plan, or how do you get people in your doors all the time? Because your emails are spot on.
Well, I write a lot from my heart. My husband would say that I overshare, but I like
guilty.
We
yogis overshare.
Right. I feel like you've got to be honest, and I love what you said earlier about when we go through difficult times, how it just propels us to be a better teacher. There have been times in my life where I'm like, I can't make it through this. I don't know why God's taking me through this, and that thought in my head, you're going to be able to work with people in a different way. This is just one more feather in your cap or whatever, where you can relate to people in a different way. So I really try to share from my heart, which I think resonates with people, not as marketing, but just as friendship and community. And I'm also very acutely aware of images on social media and making our community more diverse, even there, because I think, and I'm, a size 10 yogi, I think that it's important to show that yoga is not just for thin, young, white women, the way marketing for the past decade has kind of portrayed it. So if we can't see ourselves in a space, then it becomes really discouraging to ever go into that space. So those are probably the two things that I try to do.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I love that.
I want to ask you, Marr-Teen, does diet, is it important? Does it play into your practice? I think oftentimes we're going to the gym, we're running, we're riding our bikes, we're going to yoga 3 times a week, but then we still won't change our diet. And then we wonder why we feel the way that we feel. So when you came into the practice, did you change your diet right away, or was it you had to educate yourself a bit?
I had to build an awareness around what was happening in my body.
Okay.
And how I was feeling. And I took that, trying to understand my body as an individual, not what someone else was doing, not what everybody else. And then once I did that, just foods that were nourishing for me and my, I say dosha, but body makeup or metaphysically how I am.
Right.
So, it always comes back to fruits, vegetables, lots of water, I've recently, it took about 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
Because this is a lifestyle change.
Yes, it is.
So
Come
I
on.
went in, eating a lot of processed foods, and then I sort of tried to weed a lot of that out. If I look at my refrigerator 10 years ago and I look at my refrigerator
I know, that's
now,
right. I know.
it's
yeah. No, there was some
It's
junk in there.
completely different.
Totally different.
down to using chickpea flour,
Yeah,
right? Down
wow.
to using ghee, down to using, I'm trying to incorporate more spices,
Yes.
more Eastern spices
Yes,
in my food
yes,
because
yes.
inflammation and acne, all those
All
things.
that stuff.
So yes, I think it's important. Water, I always go back to water. It's funny, I read something about joint mobility and how it comes from muscular flexibility and how water is like oil for your joints, right? Or proper hydration lubricates your joints. And so I
Yeah.
always go back to drinking a lot of water, not overeating, portion size. It's harder to shift the lifestyle, I think, than it is to do anything else.
Okay,
Because
yeah.
we sort of fall back into meat wasn't tough for me because I didn't eat a lot of meat. But dairy was tough. Like
Yeah.
you just have to figure out
Yeah.
how it works
Yeah.
and what's in your food, right? Read the labels. Like that was another super important thing that I had to learn to do is read the label. If you can't pronounce it, I don't know if you should eat
Yeah,
it.
you're absolutely right about that. You're
And now
absolutely
that's
right.
not always, I still eat cheesecake because
Yeah.
I feel like it's a part of who I am. But that's just my thing. I don't know if that's ever going to change. But I started going back to the gym about 3 or 4 weeks ago because I was having problems with my shoulder. And I know that strengthening the muscles around your joints helps. So now I have a yoga practice and I still have some sort of a weight practice. And that's, been tremendous. But listen to your body.
It's crying out.
Yeah, and
It
figure
is
out
crying.
what your body wants you to do as far as your diet
It's
goes.
a lot of trial and error, though.
It
right?
really is.
Annelise, would you agree? It's a lot of
Yeah.
trial and error because not only are you trying to do this lifestyle change, you're really trying to come into it. You're trying to be right? And let's not even talk about the first of the year. It's just, you say enough is enough. I'm really going to do this. And you're trying to balance the work, the life, the motherhood, the wife, the partner, the business. Hello, somebody. We got all these things going on. And then time, you're aging at the same time.
Yeah.
So the decades are rolling by. So the way your body used to break down food is different.
Yeah.
The things that they put in the foods are different.
Yes.
So I don't know if there's ever a right answer. But God bless you if you're making the attempts, right? Annelise, how are you with your diet and all of that?
I'm not as good as Martina.
Yeah.
Listen, I wrote all that stuff down, Annelise.
Email me later. I just really started with getting rid of processed foods.
I understand.
That was the starting point. Can everything or for the most part, can most of the things that I put into my body be natural products, And I encourage, people who are looking for that type of change to start there because I think it's important that it's manageable. But yoga is, the greater philosophy of yoga is really has so many fine points of wisdom. And one of them is this concept of Brahmacarya, which is sometimes translated as celibacy in some versions of yoga philosophy, but there's different ways of looking at it. And the way that I have taught and have decided and like to look at it is an awareness of what and who we give our energy to. And that kind of comes back to the idea of food too, like what is fueling us. We have prana in yoga. It's our life force. It's what we would call in Chinese medicine qi. It's what keeps us alive, right? So food is an extension of that. And when we can think of it that way, everything kind of inherently makes sense. We know what choices we should make and what we shouldn't, you know?
Is yoga, in your opinion, a form of a religious practice or not really?
No. So I guess it depends on who you ask. But yoga is really tied in time and in geography, oftentimes to Hinduism, just because of where it originated. And there is some overlap, just like culturally, there's overlap with different things here. But they are separate systems. And I believe in a Christian God and still practice yoga. And, you know, I think that there's so many different ways of making it make sense for you while still allowing it to hold its inherent meaning without appropriating it or stripping it of its value.
Got you. For you, Marr-Teen, I know meditation was really key. So you feel that yoga is a form of a religion or not necessarily?
You know, it's such an interesting kind of complex question, because I have Christian yogi friends, I have Muslim yoga friends, I have Jewish yogi friends. So I don't, it's almost disrespectful. It's interfaith, right? It's not a box you can put it in. But what Annelise said was true. The origins of yoga as a philosophy is Hindu. But I think anyone can practice. My lineage is Kali Nata. I have a Swami. My teachers are monks, and we do mantra, and we at times do mantra to different Hindu gods that embody, right, certain philosophies. So you see pictures of Ganesh Bai, which is an elephant, and you know he is the remover of obstacles. So I think we have to have discernment, just like we do with anything else, and we can't appropriate, but there is a respectful way to understand what you're doing, and to not water it down to a certain extent. And I think Kashi has been interesting for me, because I do believe in a Christian God as well. So I've had all sorts of flux and movement and different understandings and misunderstandings, but I think that's great. I think that's part of what's important, being a yogi and being able to move through those understandings.
We got a question from Instagram, and they want to ask you ladies, how do you start preparing to begin a yoga routine? So Marr-Teen, I'll ask you, what do you do to prepare for your yoga routine?
I don't. I do it in the morning.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's really hard and I'm really lazy after 6 p.m.
I know that's right.
So I try to do it as early as possible. But if you're asking what I would do, or from my experience, if you can carve out even twice a week to start, I would do, 45 minutes and just find a few poses that you like and
And you drinking plenty of water?
Yeah.
Do you have a superfood before you start?
I don't eat. I normally don't eat before I practice, or if I do eat, if I'm doing a midday practice, I'll have a small breakfast. But you don't really want to do like downward facing dog and pranayama on a full belly. So, some water, and you don't have to go hard, find what is comfortable for you
and go.
And do some online stuff if you want. That's a great way to start.
Okay. Annelise, what do you think? How do you start preparing to begin a yoga routine?
I have people tell me all the time, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. And I always say, that's why you come to yoga.
Yeah.
That's not why you don't come. So, I think sometimes we can put obstacles, like what do I need to do to prepare myself? You just do. You don't need to prepare. You just do, because yoga actually is about coming home to yourself, coming back into your own body and your own power.
Yep.
So when we start to put up those obstacles, we're kind of fragmenting our power. And I agree, there's like so much great content online right now. It's one of the interesting byproducts of being in the pandemic is that everything's shifting online. There's a lot of free classes out there online. I would encourage people to get creative and play around. And then if you find somebody or something that really works for you, to maybe, if you can afford to pay and get a subscription or a program with someone that's consistent. For me personally, I miss being in the studio because I'm all about group fitness. It has a level of accountability for me that I don't always do so good at on my own at home. So for me, like paying to have a subscription or a program kind of mimics that idea of accountability, and then I get to really know the teacher and the way the teacher describes things, and I kind of understand their language. That can be helpful as a beginner too.
Annelise, share with us the demographics of the people that come to your studio, like the age possibly. Are they 35 and up or 40 and up, black and white, Latino, Asian? Like, what do you got going on at your studio?
We have a very wide range of ages. Actually, I have some yogis that are in their 70s that come and practice with us. Yeah, and they are amazing and consistent. And I admire them so much. And we have younger people. I would say predominantly we're in the 30s, maybe early 40s. And it's a little heavier toward women than men, but we're working on that still. We do have men, but just not as many. And I would say maybe 30% of our community is of color, maybe 30 to 40. It kind of depends on the time of day and the class styles. It's not quite as reflective of the diversity in Atlanta, but it's close, and we're working to continue to do better and make the space feel like home for everybody.
And it does. I'm going to go right to the over 21 question. Does yoga help your sex drive? Come on, Annelise, tell me something good. Does it help?
Well, you know what I think it does do is it makes you really comfortable with your body.
Yes.
And that helps the sex drive.
Yes.
When you feel comfortable and you feel in tune with who you are, and also you feel powerful, So I think from that standpoint, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, for sure.
It's obviously working. She just had a baby.
Yeah.
Just gonna throw that out there.
Good answer. So you would agree it helps open up one's chakra. Let's talk about it. Does it? Come on, tell me something now. Sunday, over 21.
I feel like from my experience, I used to be the shyest person when it came to physical intimacy.
Really?
Yes. Now, you would not know that by seeing me out in public, but when it came to like one-on-one intimacy, asking for what you want,
come on,
being more vocal about, being more connected, not turning the lights out, like little things like that, you just become more confident and accepting of who you are in your physical body. And yoga it makes you feel strong and powerful and complete in so many ways. I know it has for me that, I went from turn the lights out to I'm going to need you to take those off. Like that's kind of the small version of what it's like. It's just the shift. I think the shift was, as you can see that part, I really like. The shift was amazing.
You're always
because I was really shy. I was really shy when it came to that.
You're always glowing when I see you.
I am.
Because I'm going to need you to take those off.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's a yes. The confidence, for sure.
Yeah.
The confidence. Yeah. And I also think knowing the different parts of your body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, we engage bandhas, which are very like cable engagement. So you're starting to know, especially for women, your body in a way that we're not often raised to unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I took a training a couple years ago, and it was a yoga nidra training, which yoga nidra is very similar to meditation, but you're laying down and it's guided. So you're in savasana and it's guided. And I love yoga nidra.
Yeah.
And the teacher who was teaching it asked us to breathe down into our pelvis. And then when we got done, she was explaining what she took us through. And she said, it's so interesting when I tell people to breathe into their pelvis, the men never have a problem with that. They're like, I got this. And the women are like, I don't really feel like I can't feel that connection. It feels weird.
That's so interesting.
And I think, I don't know if it's 40 years of the menstrual cycle or whatever, but sometimes we feel a little burden around our pelvis. We don't feel as powerful or free with it, right? So it's nice to have something that kind of helps to rewire how we think about ourselves.
And the ability to relax. I'm going to say that very quickly. Because being able to just relax and not
and
sort
breathe.
of,
and take it all in and let it all out. I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on. So, yes, for those that are listening, yes, it can help. It can help because we need tools to help us as much as possible.
Yes.
The current economic position with the pandemic, everything is a mess. So, you know, Annelise, I want to ask you, how are things going for you? Again, people have preferences. Some want to do it in the studio with you. Some do it at home. What's really going on? You're taking it to the streets. You're in the park. Tell us what's going on for Sacred Thread.
We are doing everything. We're doing everything that we can to save our business. We're doing everything that we can to give people options because the alternative is a lot of people are not practicing. So I was sharing with you before we got on here that it's a lot of work because we are doing outdoor, we're doing in studio, we're doing online. And I didn't think that I would own an online business. That wasn't what I intended to do. So a lot of it's outside of my expertise. I'm learning as I go. But it's so important to me that I don't leave my community stranded in this time where it's actually, we need yoga the most. So it's partially fighting, like just being scrappy and trying to keep the business alive, but then also really being aware of everybody's at a different place with the virus. Some people don't mind coming into a studio, and we have very specific rules around it too to make it like as safe as possible. And then there's other people who are like, you won't see me for a year. I'm not going to be back, you know? So we're trying to give as many options as we can.
So are you limited to the space? How many people in your class now? Maybe a dozen per se?
No, not even. So my old Fourth Ward studio can hold over 40 people, and we have 8 people in class.
Wow.
And that studio specifically is my favorite if I want to go practice because the windows, it's got 20-foot windows, it's an old factory. The windows open, so it's almost like being outside, and it feels so safe to me to be there. But of course, you know, it's a calculated risk no matter what you do. But the economics right now are a nightmare. I am so discouraged by our political leadership and how we've been really left out to dry. And as much as they talk about passing packages, the packages that they put together don't actually do what businesses need them to do to make it through this. So we're stuck. I'm in a little bit of a hard place in my life, and it's been a yoga practice. I've been practicing meditation a lot to get me through.
How long has Sacred Thread been open?
8 years now.
Wow.
8 years.
8 years. And it's trippy because we were doing really well, you know, and I think I talked to other business owners in Atlanta too, and they all say the exact same thing. One of the most discouraging things is that we didn't do anything wrong. It's not like we're mismanaging our business. We're healthy. We were really excited about them. And now, you know, you're so defeated running a business and trying to keep it alive. So hopefully we all pray that,
we'll get
you know, we are turning the pages soon.
I hope so. How about for you, Marr-Teen? Has your business been impacted?
You know, I'm in such a different. I taught just yoga for probably 5 years before I took on one full-time job, and then I taught again full-time and took on another full-time job. Didn't want to go back to corporate, so I've done both. I'm not a studio owner. I don't think that was ever in my I never thought about it.
Right.
But my teaching has shifted. It's just always shifted. So it's a little easier for me as a teacher because I teach when I want to.
Okay.
Because I have a full-time job.
Okay.
So I teach once a month. I do a workshop, and then I teach at the shelter, the women's shelter, where I work full-time. And that's kind of become my both my teaching and my practice. It's always shifting. And so I take opportunities as they come. I've worked with kids people are, always contact me to work with kids or do one-off events. And I love doing that stuff because I get to sort of manage how that works. But my yoga has become, in my work as a mentor and a teacher and a support person for this transitional housing shelter, my yoga has become more important than I ever thought it would be. And I'm gonna, I'm considering going back to school and doing some work in mental health because that's just where my yoga has gone. And I think meditation and pranayama are going to save people's lives.
Wow.
I really do.
That's
I
heavy.
truly believe it.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
And I know at the shelter, the place that you work at, they do phenomenal work there. So congratulations on being there.
Thank you.
Do you think that kids should be more involved in yoga?
Oh, absolutely.
What's going on with our babies?
Oh my gosh.
Do we need them to get them downward facing dog more?
I think for 5 years I taught kids more than I taught adults. And it
Really?
was so fun. And, there are programs out there that where the curriculum is built around going into the public schools and teaching on certain grade levels.
Yes.
This project called the Mindful Life Project comes to mind. They had a whole curriculum built out to implement being mindful in the classrooms. And I think it's important, and I think it would be a great touch point for kids, but it's at the end of the budget for any school. Especially schools that are not, I say underserved. I use that term very lightly, but I think it's valuable. I love teaching my kids, and they loved coming to my classes, and they are the best at pranayama. They are the absolute best at pranayama, and they love it.
Annelise, from a studio perspective, is it a liability to have kids in the space? It's just not really good to have them there, right?
We don't. We teach a little bit differently when we have group adult classes than we would with children too. I've volunteered. There's an organization called Operation Peace that started, I think from a couple of students from Morehouse started it maybe 30 years ago as an after-school program, and now they provide free after-school and summer care to children of low-income households. And I've been working with them during the summers for the past 6 years.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me? Got you.
Oh.
Got you. Yeah, you went out for a minute, but we hear you now.
And I agree, it's amazing with children. One thing that I've noticed is that when they come into the studio, I can always kind of tell who's the class clown and who kind of is the leader. Tell their little personalities, but then when they start to do yoga, it kind of switches from what their classroom personality is. And you can see people who maybe would typically be shy will start to come into their own. And I think that's so eye-opening because we learn in different ways. And part of that is a kinetic learner, somebody who learns from moving and doing things with their body. And you can kind of see when they're doing yoga, the children that really gravitate toward kinetic learning and moving themselves around. And they're very comfortable that way. So I love to see that in schools because it gives diversity to how they learn. Unfortunately, our Western schools is very, one way, and that's not realistic. It doesn't fit.
What is the future for practice for yoga? What do you think? What do you think yoga is going to head directionally?
I don't know. I think I think we have to be prepared for whatever the transition will look like. I think right now, from a practical sense, smaller class sizes and having virtual offerings are definitely the way to go. But hopefully we'll be back in the studio at some point, because that's really where kind of the magic happens. It just, the Shakti, which is the energy that happens when you're in a group of people that are doing mantra or pranayama, or you can't really duplicate that. So I understand why it's difficult. We had at Kashi, we have 3 classrooms and a full schedule and a full kitchen where we were serving meals, and we have a robust teacher training every year, and we went completely online with the teacher training, and we were touch and go because we didn't know. So I think really we have to be open to whatever it looks like and what fits for our community, and just continue to have the offerings based on what our students and what our community is asking us to do.
I'm going to interject this. Annelise, I'm going to come back to you on that question, but I'm going to say this. Why is yoga so emotional? Let me use myself as an example. Every time I go, I'm crying. What is that about? Why is there tears? What is that about? Sometimes I feel, being transparent, helping all the people that don't practice yoga every day but want to. Sometimes embarrassed by the moves, embarrassed by the fact that I can't move the way I want to move. Then sometimes it feels like it's some form of a release. What? Annelise, help me. Why is it so emotional? What is this about?
So we have 2 different ways we like to look at the body that are not physical. One is our chakras, which Marr-Teen mentioned, and there is a chakra that really deals with our emotions. And the other way that we look at the body are what called koshas. And koshas are like these layers. If you think of the little Russian nesting dolls where you open it up and there's another inside and another inside and another inside until you get down to like the heart of it, right? And when we're in a yoga practice, we are accessing different chakras and koshas that we're becoming aware of them. They're always there, but we're speeding through life so quickly that we're not always aware of ourselves in these different ways. And there is an awareness that comes in our yoga practice, whether you take hot yoga or a deeper, more philosophical version of yoga or not. It's going to happen either way, because you are starting to move and get back into your physical body and slowing down. And there is a vulnerability. And the limitations of our physical body, I think, actually serve us in so many purposeful ways. And a lot of times we look at the limitations as things that we don't like to admit to. Like, my body won't let me do this, or I'm getting older and I can't do that. And we think of that as negative. And you'll hear somebody say, don't talk to yourself that way. But there is a realness to those limitations. And the limitations actually help us to be more humble, to be more grateful, to learn discipline, to learn how to really stick to something. And anytime we're doing those things, we go through so many different emotions. It's just the vulnerability to it that I think it's sometimes difficult to explain until you start to feel it.
You feel it. It just comes out of nowhere.
It does.
And it does.
It does. I'm like, oh my gosh.
And this might be simplifying it, but when you start this asana practice, this moving meditation that happens, there's a stillness that happens. And then you add the breath to that, and it becomes a clearing that happens. So by the time you get to the end of your practice, Shavasana is where I always cry. It's where I always cry. Child's pose is where I always cry, because there's this humbling that happens when your third eye reaches the floor. So I think when you start to move stuff, like pranayama allows you to move stuff, and then you start to, it just comes up. And it's so good, and it sucks all at the same time. Like, it's so good, and then other times I'm like, I don't even know what's happening. All I did was go into downward facing dog. Like, but it's good though. It's so good. It
is. I just always wanted to ask him, like, I feel like I'm like, why am I crying? I have no idea why I'm crying. I'm like,
so good.
This is crazy. This is nuts. Annelise, where do you want to see practices for yoga. What do you think is the future for yoga? What do you think is going to happen for us?
I think a lot of meditation. I think people are really waking up to the power of the meditative practice, which I think is amazing. And, I hope it becomes more inclusive and accessible. And I think going online is part of that too, is making it to where you don't have to, like me, you don't have to have childcare, you don't have to leave your house.
Yeah.
You don't have to live in, here's the other thing, yoga studios tend to be in more affluent neighborhoods because you're selling something, you want to make money as a business owner. So of course you target neighborhoods with a higher income level. However, most of us regular folk, are the ones that really need even more these stress managing techniques and that outlet. So I think online is great because it helps to solve some of those problems too.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome.
Absolutely.
So Annelise, how can the good people find you? Where can we find Sacred Thread? Where's the location? Tell us something good. Website, everything.
So we are in East Atlanta, right in the Village, across from Argosy. And then we're in Old Fourth Ward off the Beltline, near to Urban Licks.
Okay. I remember that.
You can find me online. My website is the Vita Yoga, the Vita Yoga. So you can check us out online or in person, and
fantastic. And donations are always welcomed, right?
They are. We're doing a GoFundMe right now to try to launch a new concept for our studio for next year. So if people are interested in reading about that, they can read about it online. But it's a diversity model and an affordability model where the classes will all be $6.
Oh, I love it.
Purposely, I was like, how much is a value meal at McDonald's?
Yeah.
$5.99.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're gonna make it $6, so it's
Love it.
equivalent,
Awesome.
So you can read about that if you want to.
And how can people subscribe? How can we get those beautiful emails that you send out to all of your people? Where do they go to sign up to get those?
So you can go to sacredthreadyoga.com and you can subscribe to the emails, and they'll tell you our schedule, all the things that we're doing.
Right.
Do also put free content online. So if you are on a budget and you still want to practice, we make it, a mission to have some resources out there that rotate a couple of times a month. So.
Awesome. Awesome.
Love
Marr-Teen, how can people find you? What's going on in your world?
So once a month, I do this really great men's only class called
Say
the
that
Friday.
Again. Wait a minute. Hold up. Can women go outside to watch?
I love it.
She said men's only. What? Come on.
Yeah, because men they don't feel as comfortable in the studio with women.
Yes.
So I was challenged to have this men's only class, and it's the first Friday of every month. And it's from 6:30 to 8, and it's at Sanskrit Moon Yoga in Hapeville.
Okay.
Sanskrit Moon also has online classes, virtual classes. They have some class in studio classes as well, and you can find their schedule at sanskritmoon.com. And kashiatlanta.org is another place where I've been teaching and training for years. We teach and train other teachers there. It's one of the only nonprofit studios on the East Coast. And we do a lot with the community before the pandemic, but we're working on it. Right. We have a full schedule of classes, and it's a really special place. Our teachers are so diverse, and the lineage is so rich. We've been around for 20 years at Kashi Atlanta. So, it's we have a lot of offerings. So awesome. Kashiatlanta.org if you want to check out our schedule there.
The men are going to do yoga.
I know.
I love
They're so cute. They're like,
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because it's no fun if the guys can't get some. They got to get in it too.
That's
We're all loose and limber, and they're stiff as a board. That's not going to work.
That's not going to work.
So we need everybody to be fluid. Like, come on, and just get centered.
Soften a little, right? Get our men to soften a little. It's important.
I love it. We're turning the corner, even though like I said at the top of the conversation, the pandemic and everything that's going on, I think out of this bad space, some good things are going to really come out of it. I think lifestyle changes are happening. People are really starting to tune in because things are not open. People are cautious about even going through a drive-through now, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people preparing things at home, spending time with their family, trying to stay active. And I think this is just one more ingredient that they can include to just make sure that we're healthy when we come through this or while we're going through this, right? So that we have the flexibility and the mobility and the soundness of mind, I think is important as well.
Sure.
I want to thank you ladies for joining me
wonderful.
today. This
Thank
was
you.
nice. This is a nice way to spend Sunday.
Yeah.
Right? This was good.
This was great.
I feel invigorated. I'm going to get a little online with Annelise.
Yeah,
I'm going to
I
get
think
a little
I'm gonna
with
do-
you.
yeah.
Yeah, I got to get a little. You gave 5 days free yoga, by the way, the other day, which
That's
was
awesome.
phenomenal. I
We
did
had
that.
an amazing 5-day challenge.
Yes.
We do
That's
that
amazing.
every so often. So get on our email.
Yeah, you're
love it.
giving goodies away. I be watching. I be participating
amazing.
over there with Sacred Thread.
Yeah.
I love you guys both. Thank you so much. That's
you.
my time. But you guys know me. I'm Real Chicks Rock. We're everywhere. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. Go check out our website, realchicksrock.com. We're pushing masks and T-shirts. We're doing all that. We want people to be safe and look cute at the same time. So yes, we're all in this together. Until next time, guys, you guys continue to take care, be well, and rock on. Take care. Thanks, ladies.